Welcome back to California State University Bakersfield's 2021 Graduate Studies Summit. My name is Deborah Jackson, and I'll be moderating our final Q&A session. I'm pleased to welcome back to our event Dr. Mahmoud Suleiman, Dr. Amber Stokes. I know I saw you log in. I'm here. Thank you. Mr. Andrew Dickinson, I heard great things about your session for international students. Are you here still?
Yes.
Wonderful. Ms. Kimber Wellman, are you back with us?
I am here.
Wonderful, thank you. Dr. Michael.
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful to see you. And Dr. Richard Mora.
Hi.
I've seen you with us all day today.
Yes, I'm here today.
Wonderful. For those of you listening, if you would enter your questions into the chat box. I don't see any right now, but I want to maybe prompt some discussion with our panelists. If I could first start by asking you to share what if you only could give someone, an undergraduate student who's thinking about grad school, maybe next year or the year after that, if you could just offer them one chunk of advice that you think is going to, that they're not going to hear from anybody else, that they tend to not think about or don't hear over and over again, what might that be? Dr. Zamora, would you start us? Start.
Sure, I can get us started. I think I would really encourage students to think about if this is a good time for them to pursue grad school at this moment. And given their personal experiences, the context that we're currently living in, and their goals and their careers and what they want to do. You know, I think that's one of the things that I've noticed, at least in graduate students' decision, is that sometimes students think about continuing right after their bachelor's, and I often engage in a conversation that maybe taking a break is a good time for them, and that's what they need to feel refreshed coming into grad school the next year. So really considering what your current situation and the current context of your world and the environment you live in right now, if this is a good time for you to pursue grad school, because grad school will always be there. And you know, you can take a break if that's what you feel like is needed for you, and not having the pressure of continuing to grad school if there's other options. So just think about that and consider that for yourself.
Can I follow up with you on that advice, Dr. Zamora? I want to, you know, as someone's thinking about, is this the right time? Am I ready? How do I know that the time is right? How do I know that I'm ready? What might be some signs that I need to take a break, or that I really am ready? Because I know for a lot of us, you know, being first in our family to go to even pursue an undergraduate degree. I know that when I started my college experience, I didn't even know graduate school existed. And it was my senior year, and one of my advisors said, "Hey, are you thinking about grad school?" And I was like, "Grad school? What's that?" You know? So, I mean, the thought of doing a baccalaureate degree is already very intimidating. How do you know when you're ready for the next step for an advanced degree?
Think about your resources and the support that you have, and your own mental health. So financial support, financial resources, you know, family support, peers. And I would also encourage you to talk to folks that you know that are in grad school, you know, and I think this is something that I've learned also as a first gen student in undergrad and in grad school, that I thought I just was supposed to go straight through, right? And until I learned that there are many people who take breaks between undergrad and grad school. I think really thinking about your own mental health, what resources you have, and what kind of support will you have if you continue moving forward in your schooling and in your education.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zamora. Dr. Stokes, I'm wondering, from your perspective, is there one bit of advice that you don't hear people sharing about grad school and preparation that you think really needs to be put out there for us to hear today?
So first, I really, really like Dr. Zamora's advice. I took 2 years off between graduating and going to grad school, partially because I just wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do next, and I needed to kind of figure that out. So I got a job and worked for a couple of years, and then got all my stuff together and figured out how to apply and all of that. So that's really great advice. But I think the other thing that is really important is just knowing that you are not expected when you get to grad school to already know everything. I think grad school is kind of intimidating because you meet your professors, you meet even grad students here on campus, and everybody seems really smart and like they know so much, but none of us started that way. we were all undergrads also. And so you don't feel intimidated by the whole process. Understand that no advisor, or they should not expect that you already have like all of the information immediately when you get to graduate school. So just be aware of that and be confident as you're going through the application process.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stokes. Dr. Solowitz, I wonder if I have a question for you. I'm thinking about the Educational Administration Program, which you're co-director of. My understanding is that most of the folks who enter that program have taken a break from their time as undergraduates. They've been working in K through 12 education for a while. What kind of advice would you give to someone who is in that situation, a returning student, someone who might feel really nervous about, gosh, it's really been a long time since I've been a student in a classroom. Did I forget everything, or whatever? Can I even fit in a desk? Because I know that's sort of strange if you've been sitting at behind a desk or not in a classroom desk. I just wonder if you have some thoughts for them.
Yeah, my first thought actually is related to when I went back to school twice, once to get my master's degree, and then a lot of years later, to get my doctorate. And I remember thinking about my doctorate, and the advice I was given at that point, I think is appropriate for anybody looking at graduate school. And it was this. I was told 3 years from now, you're going to be 3 years older, and you're either going to be called doctor or you're not, So, I guess it's kind of an antidote, or the flip side of the, wait till you're ready sort of thing. Because I do think there's an element of graduate school that's kind of like getting married or buying a house or starting a new job. Like, are you ready? Yes. Are you ever really truly ready? No, So I think it's possible to overthink this a little bit too. I think there is an element where you go, if not now, then when? Life never gets simpler. It just doesn't. It always gets more complex. And if you're waiting for it to get easier and simpler, a few years from now, it won't. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in kind of being motivated and ready to do things. I think there's some wisdom in having some professional experience before getting into a graduate program. My particular graduate program in educational administration, people ask me, what is educational administration? We teach teachers how to be principals. And there are some state requirements to get the principal's credential that we use as our enrollment criteria, one of which is you have to have 5 years of credentialed teaching experience. So my program, yes, by definition, just to get that credential per state guidelines, you have to have some experience, and that's a good thing. But ultimately, I think there's an element of just do it. If you survive 5 years in the classroom, you are a competent professional adult. You can do this, And I guess I'll toss one other thing out, kind of another variation for my program on the 3 years from now, you're going to be 3 years older with or without that degree. Can you do the job? Can you be a better principal than your current principal? Because everybody at heart thinks that they can, so I would say go for it, just do it.
Thank you so much for that encouragement, because it is very intimidating. But we do watch other leaders, and every leader makes mistakes, and we have ideas of how to do better. And that's when you have that drive, when you think, hey, I think they should do it differently. That's a good sign that perhaps that ought to be something that you pursue yourself, right? There is a question in the chat from Eileen. Her question is, how is graduate school different now from the way that it was when you were in graduate school? And Mr. Dickinson, I wonder if you would tackle this question, or at least get us started on thinking about the differences between what grad school was like when you were a student, and how graduate education has changed, or maybe thinking about the difference between graduate education where you went to school and how it works at CSUB. Maybe you could share some, either one of those thoughts.
Oh yeah, so I finished undergrad in 2009, and I took 5 years off before I went to get my master's. I was at a place where, I was fortunate to get into my field right away. Coming into sport administration, I was able to, work with media, work with college, athletics right away. But I wanted more. It was fun, and I had my times where I was like, I'm enjoying this, but I'm looking at everyone around me. I'm like, everything just feels stagnant. Like nothing is changing. Like, what can I do? And then, the push from my parents, the motivation from my siblings, because we all, even though they're much older than me, but we compete in a way. It's always going to be that competition between us, but we always pushing each other to be better than we were before. So for them going to get their masters, for my brother having them 3 masters and working on his doctorate in music, it's like, I can do this. It's like we're all together. It's encouraging, but for me, compared to now, I feel like now students want that undergraduate degree, and that's it. They're motivated, I think, by other means. For me, it wasn't about money, because some of you guys know, starting as an academic advisor, you're not making anything. For me, it was the passion working with students. For me, it was seeing them come get an education, graduate, do something with their lives. As now, I think students are more focused on money, more focused on, oh, I can do this, I can do that, and the material things, as opposed to really wanting an education. So I think that's how I feel how it's changed from 6 years ago to now. So.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dickinson. Other panelists, do you have any thoughts about is graduate education today different than it was when you were a student? Do you notice some changes, or is it pretty much the same? Or is it really about the institution you're at? I know, if you're pursuing a PhD, you're probably at an R1, as opposed to a campus like CSU Bakersfield, where we only have one doctoral program and it's not a PhD program. I'm curious what you think.
Well, I'll touch on this a little bit. I've been debating if I should share, because it's maybe not as chipper as my last comment. But I do tell students this somewhat routinely regarding my master's degree. It was in educational leadership, and it was to prepare me to be a school principal. And my particular master's degree I did through a statewide program. It was from a state institution, not in California, from another state, but not from that institution's home base. It was, a distance program, basically. Honestly, it did almost nothing to prepare me for the realities of the job. So one of the difference, at least for my particular program, now that I'm responsible for leadership development for a new generation of educational leaders, is I don't want that same experience. And so I've literally marketed my program as #Principals First Day and #Many Ways to Lead. The hashtag is a social media thing. It's my attempt to be hip and trendy. So the idea is I want you prepared for that first day on the job. When you sit in your principal's chair for the first time, I want you prepared. And again, going back to what I said earlier, nothing can truly prepare you for the first day of being a principal, but there are things that we can do that will better prepare you than not. And those are the things that we're focusing on in my particular program. I do think that being a regional teaching focused institution, CSUB, with that mission, with that focus, there's an advantage. We are here, we're local, we're with you, assuming that you're here in Bakersfield or Antelope Valley as well. And we all kind of have a common mission. With that mission being locally focused, though, we also understand that you don't know where life is going to take you. And if you move on to other areas of California or the nation or the globe, that's fantastic. And we're happy to support that as well. But I think our regional focus, I think is probably lends itself towards more support than maybe I experienced in my master's program.
Thank you for that. Dr. Stokes, I see you have a thought.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think some of this definitely is based on the institution, but I know by talking to some of my friends who are also professors at other universities, and also through conversations that I see on social media, there's a very large emphasis, especially recently, probably in the last 3 or 4 years, in making graduate school more accessible. So making graduate school more accessible to people of lower incomes, to people of different races and ethnicities, to, people with different disabilities, working really, really hard. We've had many conversations as graduate directors and people with graduate students about how to make our individual programs and our individual labs more open for everyone. How do we get as many different types of people into our programs as possible? So I think that's one big difference that I've seen recently.
Dr. Stokes, can I ask you to follow up on that a little bit? I think one, that idea of access, right, and diversity is really important as using a justice lens, right, to make sure that we're democratizing access to advanced education. What do you see as the benefits to the discipline by having a more diverse group of students and graduates for that discipline?
Well, I'm a biologist, so I'm a scientist, and science up until fairly recently was largely almost all white men. And we have a lot more women, especially in biology now. But we still don't have very many people of color within our discipline. And I was recently listening to something about how difficult it is to get into science if you have a handicap, a physical handicap of some sort, or if you require some sort of assistance, like even a service animal can be challenging in terms of getting permission to have that animal in a lab in particular. And so these types of things are on my mind, but having diverse perspectives is incredibly important because it really opens up doors. The way that I think is not the same way that Dr. Jackson thinks, or the same way that Andrew thinks, or the same, we all think in very different ways, and our backgrounds really influence the ways in which we think. So in order to come up with better questions, and to come up with better research ideas, and to come up with, really broad, broad questions that could even change the course of where science goes and where all of our disciplines go. I think it's incredibly important to have diverse perspectives in order to drive change forward. So that's my idea anyway.
Thank you, Dr. Stokes. I see that there's a question in the chat. This one's from Logan. Here he's asking whether the pandemic how the pandemic has affected graduate education. For someone who's thinking about pursuing graduate school, should they wait until after the pandemic is over? Because so much of the educational experience is being delivered remotely. Think about something like if you're doing science and you need to be in a lab, but we're in the pandemic, are you going to get all the educational opportunities that you would have if it weren't a pandemic? Should we wait, or is this actually the best time to go back and pursue a graduate degree? What do you think about that, Ms. Wellman?
I just wanted to touch on this question. As somebody who deals a lot with students who are struggling with meeting SAP and satisfactory academic progress, a lot of those are students who do struggle with online learning. With the question about waiting till the end of the pandemic, though, I think we're going to see a slow slide back to more traditional classes, but there's going to be some permanent changes in the way classes are presented. So if you struggle with online learning, instead of just waiting for things to go back to normal, because they might not, take advantage of some time to gain those skills that might help you be more successful in online learning, so that you can go back and pursue, the degree of your dreams or the future, that job you want. I think if you just sit around and wait for it to end, you're going to be waiting a long, long, long time.
And how about you, Mr. Dickinson? What do you think about that?
So based upon just what she said, I've actually, and we've discussed this in our department, we've seen a trend of adults going back to education during the pandemic. Because everybody's at home. Some have either lost jobs or they're working remotely. So we've seen an increase, for those who didn't get to finish their degree previously. So it's been some upside to it. So it's very interesting to see how those older adults who weren't used to virtual learning are actually doing, because they were used to in-person instruction. So that might be something that we do research on, but I'm looking forward to getting some data on that.
Dr. Sarma, I see that you're back. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here to join us for the Q&A session. I see you have your hand up. Did you have some thoughts about the last question?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Jackson. So again, siding with what already, Andrew has said, so it really depends on which program you're applying to. So in regards to applying to an MBA program, I would say, going by the statistics, it is actually, showing a solid rebound with some, 90% of the employers saying that they plan to hire MBA grads in 2021 and the next couple of years. So that actually could be a very good time to take advantage. And for MBAs, I don't think, I'm not saying that in-person learning matters. It does a lot when you're in the classroom, but it's not exactly like the science lab. So, I would really encourage them to, come take advantage of our CSUB program, which also offers outstanding economic value because the total cost of this program is much less than most of the private or online universities. And with all of these industries like, consulting, healthcare and pharmaceutical, big tech companies, then fast-moving, consumer goods industry, and more startups coming into the picture, again, could be a right time. Because the COVID-19 has really triggered growth in some startup areas, particularly relevant to the 2020 lifestyle changes, like digital health, home fitness, educational technology, and digital environment. So for me, I would say that, hey, guys, come to the graduate program, come apply. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sarma. And Dr. Zamora, I see you also have your hand up.
I just wanted to comment about the pandemic piece, and being a psychologist and in the mental health field, we've also learned now that there's a lot more need in our field for professionals to meet the demands of our local community, but also on a national level. And we're learning that this pandemic has caused a lot of triggering events and things that have come up that folks that are needing more access to mental health services. And this is a a wonderful time to really learn how we can support our community and our families, and just, improving people's mental health. And that goes in both in clinical work and in research work, specifically even in providing telehealth. We've been doing this for a long time, but now majority of us are doing it. So I think it's an opportunity too to learn more about specific fields and how the area of the study and the field have been impacted by the pandemic, and what's the role of current research and current approaches and how we deal with this in different areas.
Thank you for that. We have another question in the chat. This one is from Trinidad. Trinidad is asking about being a first-generation student, and really, what's the best place to find support when you're going to graduate school if you're first generation? You don't have someone in your family that you can turn to understand what graduate school is about, how to get ready for it, what the commitment entails, how to fund it, all of that sort of stuff. So any thoughts about where can you get support? I'm not sure, Trinidad, if you mean financial support, or thinking about support in other ways, encouragement, mentoring, advising, that sort of thing. But I'll just open it up to all of our panelists to respond to that. Dr. Suleiman, did you have a thought that you would like to share for Trinidad?
Yeah, thank you. There are a lot of opportunities for graduate students seeking terminal degree in the EDD program. There are some scholarships that are highly competitive, but I believe where there is a will, there is a way. Somebody actually mentioned this. I talked about that in my session, that you have to have a balance between the integrative and the instrumental motivation, and do it right now and here, and be strategic and never say never, because you don't want to do it when you have to. Do it when you can, despite the fact that you may not get all those opportunities for funding and what have you. It is going to pay off. So one of the things that we tell our candidates is basically, try to think about those resources and be strategic how you're going to survive throughout the program for about 3 years, because the degree is going to pay for itself after that. So you're going to make, a huge investment that's going to be worthwhile. But there are a lot of scholarships, and many of those institutions, the K through 20, they provide support, sometimes soft money, sometimes hard money, and what have you, but they facilitate that process. I quite frankly come from a different background, different mindset, different expectations, and but I can tell you, where there is a will, there is a way, and never let any of those obstacles, especially the financial ones, get into the way. But seize all those opportunities around you, and there are some. They may not pay for everything, but I think every little thing can help.
I know that I'm not one of the panelists, but I do have some thoughts, if that's okay, Trinidad. One of the things that I would say has made the biggest difference for me as a first generation college attendee, and also first to go to graduate school, is that having a mentor makes a huge difference in your experience, because just knowing someone that you can trust to give you guidance, to talk to when things get really hard and you feel burnt out or overwhelmed with the quantity of work, or if you start to doubt yourself and wonder if you're even cut out for the experience. There's nothing that can match that, having a great mentor. Now, I have to say that for a very long time, I knew that I needed a mentor, and I really wanted a mentor, but I didn't have a mentor, and I wasn't sure how to get one. It just seemed magical and amazing that other people I knew had fantastic mentors and that I didn't. And I think that what you really want to do is take a risk and ask someone if they will be willing to mentor you. sometimes it doesn't work. I had one conference, I had reached out to a scholar that I really admired, and I said, hey, I really love your work, and I was wondering if I could email you and talk to you more. And she said, I probably won't answer your email. And I was devastated. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that that person told me that. But on the other hand, she was honest. She was really, really busy, and she didn't have time to take on another mentee. But other times it worked. I've had times where I've emailed scholars across the country that I've admired their work, and I just took a chance and I emailed one in particular, and she wrote me back immediately and wrote such a wonderfully encouraging message and shared with me some of her research that at the time it would have been harder for me to get access to. Things are much easier to find on the internet now, but it was really moving to have someone that I admired so much respond in that way. In any case, I just really encourage you to find a mentor and take a chance and ask someone if they're willing to mentor you, and be really specific if you do ask somebody about what you need from them. Do you want them to just be a sounding board? Do you want them to read some of your work? Do you want them to guide you to an internship opportunity or to a particular program? Find out what they're willing to share with you, and you can have multiple mentors. You don't need just one, right? Dr. Stokes, I see you have your hand up. I imagine you have some thoughts.
Yeah, it's kind of in line with what you were just talking about, Dr. Jackson. Having a mentor is really, really important. But as you're going through this process of trying to find programs and applying and trying to figure out if this is the right path for you, you might seek out help right here on campus. If you wanted to go in and talk to graduate students who are going through the different programs on our campus, I advise you to do that. So you may just need to contact a professor and ask them if they have graduate students who would be willing to meet with you. I don't know what major you are. I'm a biologist, but if you wanted to speak with my graduate students, I would be more than happy to help you connect with them so that you can understand kind of what their day-to-day process is. But that would give you a really good idea for what it's like to actually be a graduate student. And then also just a little shout out to the GSC website. They have lots of really great information, and even, some, if you're in need of help with funding, there's funding to help you pay for GREs and all sorts of good advice on the website. So I encourage you to go there as well.
Thank you, Dr. Stokes. I can't believe it. We are already at the end of our day. It's after 3:30. I want to ask everyone to please thank our faculty and staff members who have joined us today, shared their wisdom, and really given us a lot to think about to help prepare for graduate education. Thank you for being here. Thank you for attending CSUB's 2021 Graduate Studies Summit. I want to remind everyone to please join us from 1 to 3 p.m. on Thursday, November 4th for CSUB's virtual grad fair. You can register by clicking on the link posted in the chat. It is a link that'll take you to CSUB's Handshake webpage. Please be well, take care, and have an outstanding weekend.